So there's always an interesting dynamic with the 49ers end of their roster wide receivers. Last year, there was an interesting dynamic because there was a 7th round draft pick in Ronnie Bell that many were high on. Then there was Danny Gray, who didn't really produce in his rookie season, but there was a lot of high hopes. And I was out there at training camp, and he looked really good. I was impressed with Danny Gray. In fact, I thought he was going to make the 53-man roster. We all know that in week 2, he got hurt on the opening kickoff, and he was injured, and they never brought him back. He basically got capable, did some practicing for 3 weeks during the end of the season, but they elected not to bring him back. Why? Well, part of the reason is you would have had to move on from Chris Conley, who they were extremely high on at the time, and Ronnie Bell, and more than likely a team would have picked them up, especially Ronnie Bell, because he's a young player. They could have claimed him on waivers. The 49ers had to protect Ronnie Bell, so the best way was let Danny Gray stay on the IR. But now here we arrive at a situation where Chris Conley's still at the end of this roster, Danny Gray's still at the end of this roster, and so is Ronnie Bell. What makes it interesting is because the 49ers drafted 2 wide receivers during the 2024 NFL Draft. Drafting 1, that gives an opportunity for 2 of these guys to make the team. Drafting 2 means it may be difficult for any of them. Maybe one of them makes the team out of the 3 that we talked about, and that's not including adding guys like Trent Taylor, who has special teams upside because of his ability to secure catches in the punt game. You throw in the fact that they're going to have a new special teams way of doing kickoffs, it's going to get interesting. Kyle Shanahan even talked about that in his presser. So what do you do with these 3 guys? Because the likelihood is Ricky Pearsall's making the team. You're not cutting a first round draft pick, that's for sure. Jacob Cowling is more than likely making this team. You selected him at the 4th round. You really liked him. So the odds are one of those guys is not going to make the team. So you're looking at Chris Conley, and first off, I got to give Chris Conley his due. Not only did he show up at the end of the year, but he showed out. And it doesn't always show up with receiving, even though he did make some key catches, including a key catch against Detroit in the playoffs. But also, he did a very good job blocking. And we know that Kyle Shanahan is very fond of the players that can make a block in the run game. No block, no rock. And Conley's big physical nature allows him to be able to do that. Now, he's not quite the burner he was when he came out of college and when he played with Kansas City. He used to be a 4'3", stretch the field vertically guy at 6'4". That's tremendous size and speed. Now, he doesn't have that same quickness, but what he does have is a bunch of veteran ability. He understands how to create separation. He runs good routes. He's able to block. He's able to help you on special teams. Nothing more evident than his appearance as a gunner in the Super Bowl. He was absolutely fantastic playing gunner. He had 2 really big special teams plays. So what did I talk about earlier? One of the ways to make this football team is by what you can do beyond what the others can do. And he is very, very equipped when it comes to special teams. What is his elite upside? There's not really any at this point in his career. He's over the age of 30. He's definitely slowed down. He's relying more on physicality and his ability to understand the game and understand what defenses are trying to do to him, but also to be physical at the point of attack. That's where he's going to make his bacon. That's where he's going to make the plays for this 49ers offense. So how is he used in the 49ers scheme? Well, with the players you got, by adding Pearsall and adding Jacob Cowling, he fits pretty nice. Now, you've got Juwan Jennings, who is a big physical body, but Conley can play outside. Conley can be physical at the point of attack. You can also play him in the Jennings spot. So he's got versatility, which makes him a player the 49ers could definitely use. There's a vision for him, and he fits nicely to complement the other players. That's part of what you have to do. Complement the other guys. What is the things that you can do to complement the other players that you have in the room? Because you know Ayuk, Debo, Juwan Jennings, and Ricky Pearsall are for sure there, and probably Jacob Cowling. Well, Cowling's, small and fast, so you know what he's going to be doing as far as creating separation. So we know what Conley would be. Now let's talk about Ronnie Bell, because Ronnie Bell was thought to be a big special teams addition when they drafted him. However, he was not a big special teams addition. In fact, he struggled on special teams mightily. Whether that was struggles in returning punts, which he put the ball on the ground sometimes, just made it a little bit scary back there. Or it was him making mistakes when he played on the punt team. There were just a plethora of mistakes from Ronnie Bell when it came to playing special teams. So he loses a leg up on Chris Conley. Also, what is it that Ronnie Bell does very well? Well, he normally gets open over the middle, but there's a weakness there as well. Ball coming off his hands a lot of times ends up being in the tip zone. There were a few times that balls hit the ground harmlessly that could have easily been intercepted, and other times they were off his hands for interceptions. That is something that is concerning. You throw in the fact that there's a lack of physicality, you have to find out where exactly you fit him. He doesn't block as good as Chris Conley. So he probably, is more in the Jacob Cowing role, where Jacob Cowing is faster. Jacob Cowing creates more separation. But even though Ronnie Bell's a good player, he can create separation on his own at times, he definitely is little bit more limited within this offense. How does he complement the other players? And I think that's the more difficult role to find. I think you can find opportunities for him in the slot. I think there are some opportunities for him to be able to have a natural separation. He doesn't exactly create the most when he gets in and out of his break, but he does a pretty good job. Another thing he lacks a little bit is catching the ball in contested catch situations. But we've seen him make a few plays like that, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's gotten better. But I worry about his size, his ability to block, and his special teams compared to Chris Conley. So right now, I think Conley would have a heads up as far as a player on the bubble. Then you throw in Danny Gray. And right away, the thing that screams to you about Danny Gray compared to the other two we just talked about is speed. Now, how important is that speed now that you've got Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall? I think that's to be determined. Now, the one difference between the three is Danny Gray is a 4.33 who looks like a 4.29 on film. When you look at the other guys, Pearsall doesn't quite look as fast as 4.41, but he's plenty fast enough. And Jacob Cowing does look 4.38. So Danny Gray still has some ability there. Now, where Cowing is 5'8" and 168 pounds, Danny Gray is over 6 foot and over 190 pounds, a bigger athlete. So the elite speed is definitely something you like. Now, how well is he going to block? Well, he did pretty good in training camp last year. It looked like his technique was a lot better. He looked more comfortable within the system. And my problems with him in training camp his rookie year was his inability to know exactly where he was supposed to be. Also, his inability to get from point A to point B when he was supposed to get the ball in timing. Now, that was a Brandon Ayuk problem at times his rookie season. So it's not like it's only Danny Gray. There's a lot of players that struggle with that. But Gray looked really good in his sophomore season in training camp. Early reports out of OTAs are that he made a few catches. That's great news. Nothing really to rely on, but it's good to see that he's out there catching the football. That means he's healthy, and that's important because Danny Gray is going to have the training camp of his life to make this football team. He's going to have to prove to the 49ers that speed is not the only element to the game that he's going to provide. They don't need that only now with Jacob Cowing. Now, as much speed as you can get is always welcomed, as long as Danny Gray can block consistently and make sure that he helps out in the run game. He also has to be able to help on special teams. This is where Danny Gray gives himself a chance to make this football team. Number one, they liked him returning kicks. They were giving him a shot last year when he was injured. Number two, he's a fantastic gunner on the punt team. So Conley and Danny Gray, almost forgot his name there for a second, are guys who help significantly on special teams. That's their advantage over Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell is going to be in the battle as well. These three bubble players and how they figure out who makes this roster, it could be three working for one spot. You got to believe right now Conley is sitting in the catbird seat because of what he did last year in the playoffs. They feel comfortable with him. His veteran leadership and a veteran attached to this group is always a good idea. So where do you put this group right now? I would say that you probably got Chris Conley, the first guy, and I would put Danny Gray number 2 and Ronnie Bell number 3 because of special teams prowess. How it plays out is going to be determined at training camp. This is a battle that won't be won from last season. It won't be won in OTAs, but it's going to be won in training camp and preseason. Who is more consistent and who is going to help more on special teams? They need Coach Snyder to go to Kyle Shanahan and say, you know what? What are you thinking at the wide receiver room between these three guys. And Kyle says, you know what? It's right now I got Conley 1 and Danny Gray 2, but it's razor thin. Ronnie Bell's right there. And they need Snyder to say, you know what? I need Danny Gray, or I need Chris Conley, or I need Ronnie Bell. That's going to be their way to help make this team the sixth wide receiver, because there's no other way the 49ers are keeping 6 wide receivers unless that sixth guy is significant in special teams. And Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall might have something to say about these players' help on special teams anyway. So it's going to be a fun one there. I think those guys are 3 bubble players that I'm interested to see where they end up.